buffer here. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Win. Hi, Vicki.
So,
Hello.
so good to
So nice.
see you.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You look
Oh,
relaxed in your post-retirement phase.
Yeah, it's a whole new phase of life that I've just entered. Yeah,
So
it's so
good.
far so good.
yeah. No, well, and we know how busy post-retired life can be, and we'll have to get to that because we know you're working on some really exciting projects. And like so many retirees, it feels like people kind of launch from, what was traditional working life into this, second life that's so full
Mhm.
of so many exciting things. And we know you're up to all kinds of good stuff.
I've
But
always got a few irons in the fire.
Hmm.
yes, but we love it. We love visiting with you, Michelle, because you do such a good job of looking back and bringing things forward. And we're so excited that you wanted to visit with us about a series that you actually started in 2021 on your blog about clutter tales. And I can't think of anything that's a better unifier for people than battling clutter and dealing with just all those little pockets of things that seem to accumulate. But you have such insight about all of that, and we love what you've written about it, because for some of us, we remember the pre-internet days where having things in physical form, paperwork, all the stuff was sort of a reality of life. So we love visiting with you, but we know as we're inviting our storyteller friends to come and join us, you've got a couple of gems to share with us about clutter tales. So we'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So back in 2021, I decided it was time to take control of the clutter in my life. It's really interesting, like what led me to do that. Well, a lot of it comes from just thinking about, well, I don't want someone else to have to deal with this down the road when I'm not around anymore, right? And
Yeah.
not to mention just looking around and you go, why do I still have all this stuff? I should really get rid of some of it. So
Yeah.
I started this decluttering series on my blog where it was 52 weeks of decluttering. And every week I tackled a different area of my home and decluttered. And to keep
Mm-hmm.
myself accountable, because, sometimes you start the year with really good intentions and then you get a little bit lazy and you just don't get it done. So to
Yeah.
keep myself accountable, I committed at the beginning of the year that I was going to share every week on my blog an update on how I did that week. So I got a few weeks into the year and I said, gee, I'm finding all this stuff. And, one of the first questions I ask when I'm decluttering is, did I even know that I owned this?
Mm.
And I was
That's a
Mm-hmm.
finding
great
all
question.
sorts of stuff. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like it really is.
Yeah.
Like it's not even, do I use this? Do I need this? It's really,
Yeah.
wow, I found stuff lurking in drawers that I had completely forgotten that I owned.
Yeah.
So it was like, wow, this is really kind of cool because some of those things really brought back some really cool memories, right? And took me back to a different time and a different place.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're decluttering, you can't keep all that stuff, right? Like at some point, you have to say goodbye.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Marie Kondo because I just think she's a little extreme. But,
Mm-hmm.
Marie Kondo always says, thank your items and let them go. So,
Yeah.
with that in mind, I thought, well, how could I do that? So, oh, I found this thing. Well, why don't I write a blog
Mhm.
post about what this thing is, how I used it in the
Right.
past, what it meant to me, and then that
Yeah.
would, capture the
Yeah.
story, but then let it go. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where Clutter Tales came from. So I
Mm.
thought, oh, I could do a whole series on this. And I
Mm-hmm.
did. And I actually invited some of my readers to share their own Clutter Tales. So I had a series of, I wrote most of the posts, but I had
Mm-hmm.
a series of guest posts from some of my readers where they thank their
Nice.
clutter and they, so
Yes.
I really because I think one of the challenges for people with decluttering is the sentimentality of it, right?
Yeah.
It's the, oh my gosh, I can't get rid of this thing because this person gave it to me and that person gave it to me. And I will admit that some of the things I wrote about I kept because they were that important to me that I wanted to keep them. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them I thanked them, wrote the article on my blog,
Mm-hmm.
and then I let them go. So that's where
Mm-hmm.
Clutter Tales came from.
Mhm.
And you
What I
raised a
love about that, I
sorry.
wanted to share oh, no, I wanted
Yeah.
to share what I love about that is that you gave yourself some time to consider it
Yeah.
Mhm.
rather than just, doing that kind of rampant everything goes, in the garbage or giveaway. You slowed the process down enough to really consider, and then the writing about it, it will live
Mhm.
forever in that way. So
Right.
I think that pause was such a meaningful thing for you to do.
And I think that's where my approach to decluttering is different than some of the traditional decluttering experts that
Yeah.
say, you must complete it all in a weekend. You must get rid of it. Like, don't even think
Yeah.
about it. Sentimentality aside, just get rid of it if you
Yeah.
don't use it. Right.
Yeah.
So I like to take, for a couple of reasons, I take a much more thoughtful approach. One,
Mhm.
because I want to make sure that I don't do anything hasty that I later
Yeah.
end up regretting. And secondly, from a sustainability point of view, I don't want to be
Mhm.
filling the landfill with my crap, right? I would rather
Yeah.
take my time
Yeah.
and get rid of things, give them to someone who wants them and can use them rather than just
Mhm.
tossing them to the curb on Monday morning and that's
Yeah.
it. They're gone, not my problem anymore, right?
Yeah. No, I love that.
So I
But in
chose a
in
couple
doing
of
that, you have to
tales.
get comfortable making a mess and letting it
Yes.
it be for a little bit. So I guess that's
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
thing. Forgive me for interrupting you, but
No, it's
I'm
okay.
thinking about that. I think sometimes I move too quickly through the process because I get stressed about trying to clean up a mess and making a
Hmm.
bigger mess,
Right.
right?
Being in
Yeah.
transition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and I've kind of resigned myself that, every little step is a step in the right direction, right?
Mhm.
And
That's good.
everything I get rid of helps. And if it
Mhm.
takes me 10 years to get it done, so be it, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not like I'm moving next week and I have a sense of urgency, right? This is just
Yeah.
something I'm doing over a period of time. I'm still at it. 3 years later, I'm still decluttering. I'm going
Yeah.
back and refreshing the series
Oh,
every week now
wow.
and
Yeah.
redoing the tasks. And the good thing is, this time around, I'm finding less stuff to get rid of, right? Because I
Oh,
did make good progress. So it's a reminder of the progress that I've made too,
yeah.
which is always a good thing. So,
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, we love that you have some additional examples and stories to tell. So keep going. This is all very
okay.
inspirational. As I look around my very hmm, my very messy office. Hmm.
Some
I'll
of
keep
those
my
Post-it
eyes
notes, you're
here.
gonna have to let it go, huh, Vicki?
Oh, girl. Yeah. It's a good thing the camera is just on me in the background. Yeah. Our friends don't need to see, but Michelle, you're giving oodles of inspo here. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Oh my.
Okay, so I have a short snippet, a couple short snippets if we have
Yeah.
time. But the
Yes.
Yes.
first short snippet was the one of the first clutter tales that I ever wrote. Um, was about my high school shorthand textbook. Now, you may have listeners that don't even know what shorthand is. And this
Hmm.
goes back to the days when, the boss would say, take a letter, and the secretary would sit with her pencil and her steno pad. And she wasn't speed writing. She was actually using shorthand to write down a
Yeah.
letter, which she would then go to her typewriter, there's another one, and type up,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I even had this textbook because we were supposed to turn in all of our textbooks at the end of the school year, but somehow on
Oh,
my bookshelf, I had this shorthand textbook. So
Michelle,
that
you're a
took
naughty
me back.
girl. Naughty,
I know,
naughty.
I know. They don't teach it anymore at my high school, or otherwise, the high school library police might be coming after me to,
Yeah. Right. Right. Oh
to
my
find this
gosh.
book.
Yeah.
So in my Cluttertail high school typing class shorthand 2, I wrote a few things. So I wrote a couple paragraphs down here to share with
Yeah.
with you and your
Great.
listeners. So by far my biggest memories of high school typing class and shorthand class are of my teacher. I was in her class for typing and shorthand in both grades 11 and 12. Mrs. Collins was a very strict Russian lady. I have to admit, we were all a little bit, or a lot, depending on the day, afraid of her. She ran a tight ship, and there was
Ooh.
no room for tomfoolery in her class. This was serious business. Looking back, Mrs. Collins taught us lessons that extended far beyond the typing and shorthand we were there to learn. She taught us skills and qualities we would need to do well in the working world, from showing up on time to avoiding the serious crime of chewing gum in the office to knowing how short a skirt is too short to wear in the office. we left her classroom knowing how to conduct ourselves. We were ready
Mhm.
for office life. And it's interesting how
Wow.
holding that textbook just
Mm,
brought all of that back to
mhm,
me, right?
Oh,
Like this, she
yeah.
was a fierce lady, and we convinced ourselves that she was a Russian spy that had been sent to spy on Canadian teenagers.
Oh my gosh.
Because this is
Well,
back in the Cold War era, right?
right?
Yeah.
right, right. Oh my gosh. I love that. And I think there is something about when you were talking before about the decluttering, there's something about tactile memories holding
Mhm,
things
Mhm.
mhm,
that
Mhm.
really is, it's like transportation, and
right?
Yeah.
time travel. But again, your point about slowing things down, that only
Yeah,
happens if you give
Yeah.
yourself the moment to connect, right?
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
Cool.
interesting how the topic morphs into, sort of lifestyle that she was teaching you, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And it's funny too, because it's funny that my daughters often say to me, they're young adults, right? And they say, we can't believe you're still friends with some of your friends from high school. And we can't
Mm,
believe that, you still have these vivid memories of high school. And it's like, yeah, it is really funny. And it's one of the reasons that to me, like taking that time to write that
mhm,
story and to share it on my blog, well, now it's captured forever, right?
right,
The
Yeah.
textbook is long
Yeah.
gone, but I
Yeah.
took some pictures of it and I shared them in my blog post, right? The textbook is long gone, but those memories are there and they're
Yeah.
captured forever. And I do think that one of the reasons I love your podcast and your blog as well is that you allow people to capture some of those stories and share them,
yeah,
because that is so important, because the time will come when we're not there to share anymore,
right,
right? And
right,
that's
Yeah.
what one of the reasons I still blog. It's one of the reasons I write down so many of these things, is so that
Yeah.
down the road, 50 years from now, when I'm not around anymore, my
Yeah.
daughters will still have those to look at.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. That reach into the future. It's the only way
mhm,
we can really do it.
right,
yeah,
Really.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
I love that. And I love Wynn's point about, kind of the scary teacher,
yeah.
right? And so she taught you the skills, but isn't that what we love most about our favorite teachers and why we remember them? Because things that they taught us and instilled in us are
mhm,
valuable decades later. They're
right,
still
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah. And
Wow.
I've often thought throughout my working life, when we would get people, in the office not dressed appropriately or other things, and I've
Yeah.
often thought they obviously did not have Mrs. Collins in
they
grade
didn't.
11 and 12 typing,
They need a
because if they
refresher
had,
Yeah.
with Mrs. Collins.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It
if
was
they
not
had,
all
they would
bad.
know.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
I love that.
I had a former student who asked me once, because I mentioned having to take a typing class when I was a freshman in college, I
Mm,
think. And she asked me about what shorthand was. Was that like caveman texting? And I was like, oh, well, kind of, right?
yeah,
I mean, it
I
was,
guess. I
yeah,
guess.
like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe, but
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
concept that is just completely removed, right?
And
All
Yeah.
of
it's
that.
a sign of how much, and that's one of the things I find the most interesting, right, is how much technology has changed our lives and changed the
Mhm.
world that we live
Yeah.
in. And even when I was in high school, shorthand was on its way out.
Hmm.
Like I often think, gee, I spent 2 years in school learning a skill that I've really never used in the workplace.
Yeah.
But because dictaphones were around in those days. That was the next evolution in
Hmm.
the take a letter was now,
Yeah.
well, now the boss would dictate the letter into a dictaphone and the secretary
Right.
would type it up on her typewriter.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then over time, then as when
Yeah.
I entered the workforce, then we got PCs, right?
Yeah.
And then the bosses
Yeah.
type in their own letters and
Yeah. We
emails, right?
finally
So
taught the boss
yeah,
to type.
yeah,
Thank gosh. Right? Yeah. Wow.
That's so
yeah,
good. And you had
Yeah.
another clutter tale that you
Yeah.
were going to tell
yeah.
us.
So the second one is called Memories of 1980s High School Me.
Mm.
So as I was looking through my bookshelf, so both of these stories actually came from my bookshelf. As I was
Yeah.
looking
Hmm.
through my bookshelf, I found my high school yearbooks. And when I opened up my grade 13, so in Ontario back in those days, we had grade 13,
Mm.
which the final year of high school was almost like first year of university. Like it was
Yeah.
the next step, right?
Mhm.
So in my grade 13 yearbook, there were tucked in the front some memorabilia. My high school timetable was there, my report card was there, so all of that stuff.
Wow.
But one of the things that I found was a sheet of paper that was a piece of French homework. So I'll read to you what I wrote about that particular item. I said, "Ah, yes, the 1980s. It was the era of big hair, bigger dreams, and even bigger shoulder pads.
Yes.
Oh.
During a recent book decluttering session, I came across my high school yearbooks. Tucked away in front of my grade 13 yearbook were a few pieces of memorabilia, the commencement program, my grade 13 class timetable, and the subject of today's post, a piece of homework from one of my French classes. French homework? What kind of memories could possibly come from a piece of French homework? Well, this sheet was a list of questions and answers about our favorite things.
Mm.
As I
Oh.
read it, I realized that 1980s high school Michelle had some different likes and dislikes compared to 2020's Michelle.
Huh. Imagine that. Hmm. Hmm.
Some of the things, it was interesting, right? Because probably there were like 20 things on the list,
Mhm.
and maybe about half of them I would still say, yep, they're absolutely true today, including
Yeah.
who's your favorite band? Well, it's Queen. It's
I
always
was
been
gonna
Queen.
say
Yeah,
That
you're
yeah.
always will
a
be Queen.
girl, right? That would have to be on the list, right? Oh
Yes.
my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was one. The other thing was who's your favorite politician? And I said I don't
Oh.
have one because they're all stupid.
Well,
Not far from the
know,
truth, even today. In fact, it's probably worse
absolutely.
today than it was then. But anyway,
Yeah, no
so
doubt.
those were a couple of things that had changed. But then
Gosh.
there were a number of things that or those were things that hadn't changed. There were a number of
Yeah.
things that had
Mm,
changed.
mm,
Was who is your favorite singer? And I said
Mm.
Tom Petty, who I still love Tom Petty. I still think he's great, but I think Elton John has replaced Tom Petty in my heart over the
mm,
years.
mhm.
My
I'll
favorite
give you that.
movie,
That's
yeah,
okay. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm all right with that. Yeah.
Elton's an
Yeah.
icon. I mean, unfortunately, Tom's no longer with us, but
I
Right.
know.
he was fabulous. But no, Elton John
Yes.
is right up there with Queen as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing was, what's your favorite movie?
Mm.
And I said Gone with the Wind, which this was a
Oh,
Really?
strange choice for me.
Huh.
interesting.
I think
Mm.
Forrest Gump, which obviously wasn't made in those days, but Forrest Gump has
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
replaced that. Um, and then things like the food. So, what's your favorite vegetable? I was very
Oh.
boring because I said my favorite vegetable was carrots and my
Oh.
favorite fruit was apples. So,
Oh.
no, I was not very adventurous, I guess, back in those days, which maybe
No.
reflected how, the type of cooking that my mother did for us.
Yeah.
But, now I
Right.
would probably say asparagus and some kind of berries, maybe raspberries would be at the top of list of foods.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yes. Yeah.
Was your choice a reflection of your vocabulary in French? Like, were you, I
Right.
like,
That's
I'm
such a
thinking
good point.
the workarounds,
Hmm.
right? Because I could
Could
go like
be.
red strawberries, but I'd have to really think about some things,
Yeah,
right?
well, I
Yeah.
think I would have known how to say raspberry in French, but maybe
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
asparagus. Like,
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe
Yeah.
yeah.
My
Yeah.
answer to all the questions, pomme de terre.
Pomme
Yeah.
de terre.
Yeah. Which for me would be accurate, right?
Yeah.
I would eat a potato any day,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Any day. Oh, that's
Look at
hilarious. But
you,
yeah.
Vicki, translating on the fly.
Woo!
Don't
Yeah,
use Google
dusting
Translate.
off. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's hysterical. But I understand why you would like go, wow, I was like a boring, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Woo, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other one too is my favorite beach. Well, I'm not really a beach girl, honestly. I love
Wow.
water and I love the ocean, but I'm not a lay on the beach, sit around on the beach
Yeah.
kind of person. Never
Huh.
have been and never
Yeah.
probably will be. But my favorite beach was Valens, which is not even a real beach. It's like at a small conservation area not
Mm,
far from where I lived growing up.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not a real beach.
Hmm.
I said, no, if I
Hmm.
was going to pick a
interesting.
favorite beach, it would be a real
Interesting.
beach.
Yeah.
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 But
Yeah.
also an interesting question for your teacher to ask.
Yeah.
Clearly, beach lover to
Yeah.
say, hey, students, tell me your favorite beach,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
I
that was a real fun look down memory lane,
yeah,
at wow, how much had changed, but also how much had not changed,
right.
since my
Yeah.
high school years, right? It's
Yeah.
interesting.
And all this reminiscence makes me think, I wonder if Miss Collins, taught how big of a shoulder pad is too big.
She
Oh.
probably did.
Oh.
She
Yeah.
probably did. Yeah, it's so funny. The fashion, oh my gosh, yes,
Oh,
the
those
fashion in the 80s. This
yes.
was the early 80s, right? So, yeah,
Right.
big hair, big
Mhm.
Big
shoulder
hair,
pads.
but
Yeah.
I wish I had a Norma Kamali red knit turtleneck dress with massive shoulder pads. And I am still, and it was like maxi enough length for me. I'm like 5'9", and I am so mad at myself that I gave it away or something because I could have just clipped the shoulder pads out.
Yeah.
Right.
Why
Yeah.
did I do that? Right? It
Yeah.
was, but yeah. Oh my gosh, so revealing. Your clutter tales are pretty fabulous,
Mm,
Michelle.
they
Yeah.
are.
They're
Mm-hmm.
fun, and there was another one, I found notes from a fortune teller visit. So years
Oh,
ago, I
Oh.
went to see a fortune teller, and I found the notes that I'd written of things she told me during that visit. So that became another clutter tale. So there's a whole series of these
ooh,
clutter
Mm.
tales, and they really
ooh,
are. I go back and read them from time to time, and they make me smile because they bring
Yeah.
back so many memories of a different time,
yeah,
and allowed me to explore some of these stories and tell some of these stories, and I think that's what it's all
Yeah.
about, right?
yeah,
So
definitely.
good. We love those stories.
We
And
do. And we'll
they
be
talk
sure to link it all so that
yes, and
people
Yeah,
can read. Mhm.
one of the things I remember reading about is that 16 to 25, those years are what we often
Yeah,
are referred to as the reminiscence bump because we
mhm,
just are packed full of memories from that
yeah,
particular time that's so fertile for growth and
yeah,
social interactions and change. I mean, it's just that we do so much in those years.
yeah.
yeah.
It's true, and they form who we are, right,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
as an
Yeah.
individual, right? And
Right.
it is interesting, to be transported back. And for me, music does that for me, right?
Hmm.
So I hear a
Yeah,
song and I'm immediately back in the 80s. And I
Right.
yeah.
heard something. This is actually, I don't know the science behind this, but I did hear that listening to music from the year you turned 18
Mm-hmm.
actually helps to keep you young, and to keep a
Oh.
young outlook. So I have a whole playlist, 18 till I die, I call it, right? So I have a whole playlist of
I
songs from
love
the year I
it.
turned 18, which is 1982, which
Oh,
was the year I
oh.
graduated high school. So there you go. It's all
Yeah,
these memories are all from that same time in my life.
yeah. I'm with you all the way. And it depends on what you look at. 18, I've heard 10 to 12, I've heard
Mhm.
the reminiscence bump, but all of that explains why anytime someone gets in my car, it will be, if I've got Sirius XM on, it'll be the bridge,
Yeah.
because it kind of hits that array of songs during that time. But I'm so happy to hear that music for you is one of those, continuity threads because if our listeners don't know, Michelle's got a beautiful voice and she sings in a band and she's not just a fan of Queen, but the girl can actually sing Queen. So, I mean,
Yeah. No doubt.
amazing. Yeah.
Michelle rocks.
Yeah, you do.
In
Well,
many
thank you
ways.
so much. This was so much fun, and I can see us having more Clutter Tale chats in the future. But
Absolutely. So
boy,
inspirational. And the way that you do that, not only the stories that come out of it, but the whole
yeah,
process is so
yeah,
good. Thanking it and letting it go. So,
And I
yeah.
have been as I go through it's interesting, as I go through my second round of my 52-week decluttering challenge, I haven't written oh, I did, I wrote about my bowling shoes, that's right, that's a
mm,
story for another time too,
Oh,
but, I just found the other day something that I put aside and said, "Yep, that's a clutter tale, so just stay tuned, there will be more clutter tales to come."
so good.
well, and more about all of your other projects and activities. So we look
Mhm.
forward to learning about all of that. Anything that you want to particularly mention right now before we close? You're a busy
Sure.
lady.
So yeah, so I say retired in air quotes from my full-time career, and I'm diving into my second life. I am looking to set up a retirement coaching business. So I certified as a retirement coach to help people with the non-financial side of retirement.
Mhm.
So I'm looking to do something with that. Haven't quite
Wonderful.
figured it out yet, but that's the beauty of this stage of life. You can make it up as you go along and figure things out as you go.
Yes.
And then I'm also working on a book project, collaborating on a book with a couple of other people about the impact of longevity and how that should make us rethink how we spend our later years, right? It's not
Mm.
sitting in a rocking chair on the porch watching the world go by. There's so many things that you
Yeah.
can still contribute to the
Right.
world after you reach that, age where people just want to put you out to pasture. So that those are a couple of things I'm working on.
Wow.
So
Well, we'll
good.
be talking again soon. Lots,
Yes.
lots to tune into, but thanks for the inspiration today. I'm looking
Yeah.
around again going, okay, I've got some time, right? Yeah. Oh my goodness. But thank you both. It's
Yeah.
always fun.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Michelle.
having me.
Thank you, Vicki.
Bye.
Bye.